everyone, and welcome back to our first virtual STEM event for 2021. My name's Lisa Mees, and I'm Interim Dean of Arts and Sciences, and I'm here with
Todd Kruger, and I'm the Department Chair of the Natural Sciences.
And also on the call with us today, we have Sudeepa Patek, which is an Assistant Professor of Mathematics and Engineering here at COA. And we also have Kanika Bryant, who is Assistant Professor of English here at COA. And they all have some exciting information to share with you today. So who's ready for some snow this winter? I wonder if we're going to get any. Well, just in case we do, we want to be prepared.
Exactly. If you can't go outside and play in the snow, what are we going to do?
So today we're going to build some snowball catapults. So you're going to first need to get your kit that hopefully your parents pre-registered and picked up. And within that kit, we have a number of items. We're going to have a cotton ball, aka snowball.
Good.
You should have 9 or 10 popsicle sticks, a plastic spoon, and a handful of rubber bands. Now, we're going to build something. When we think about building something, we need to start thinking like an engineer. Ms. Patek, tell us how to think like an engineer.
We have to start by thinking, what do we need to achieve? What are we planning to get out of this? And that brings us to thinking about what should be the design of this thing which we are making. And then design leads us to what are the materials we need to do this experiment. And once the materials are with us, we are going to assemble them or construct our machine or design. That's how engineers think. Once the design and the machine is made or constructed, we are going to test it up. If it works according to the way it works, then it's fine. Otherwise, we're going to go and change our design and we are going to retest it, whether it did what we wanted it to do. And that's how engineers work in real life. That's how engineers think. That's how engineers design. Any small thing like a fan which is on the top of your head, like the car which you ride on, started with small things and then it went to big constructions. If you're really thinking about good machines around you, we can help you in COA. In a couple of years, you can come here, take our 2-year course, and then transfer to a 4-year university and become full-fledged engineers.
That sounds exciting. I think I'm going to build this snowball catapult. All right, so here we go. So the first thing we want to do is we want to count out 7 popsicle sticks. So let's all count together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, we're going to stack them all up. And we're going to take our rubber bands, and we want to take the rubber bands so we can attach these popsicle sticks together and make a nice thick stick. So I'm going to take one rubber band, I'm going to attach it around the end, and I'm going to loop it around several different times until I can't get it anymore. And you may need some help with your parents. This one is a little bit more difficult to build because we got to hold things together. And then we're going to do the exact same thing with the other end. I'm going to loop the rubber band around as much as I can to try to make this one solid piece. Oh, I think I got it. Okay. Now the next thing we want to do, so I want to take 2 popsicle sticks and we're going to attach these together. We're only going to attach them on one end. So I've got 2 on the bottom and 1 on the top. Okay. I'll attach them with my rubber band again. Might be as good as I can get it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to slide. I might have made these too tight. Realized that Ms. Patek, when she was talking about the engineering process, realized mine's too tight. I can't do anything. So I think I'm going to take one of these popsicle sticks out, see if it makes a difference. Oh, there we go. So let's just try it with 2 this time. Now can I pull them apart? Oh, I think I can. I might loosen up one rubber band. I think I was getting too ambitious. All right, so now I'm going to take and I'm going to put those thick pieces and I'm going to slide them in, okay? We want to slide them in about a little over halfway. And now we're going to take our next rubber band and we want to crisscross here so we can try to make this piece stay intact. And this is where this experiment is a little bit more challenging than some of the other ones. So I'm going to go across 2 times so I can attempt to make an X. And then I'm going to come back across. Maybe I'll use a couple of rubber bands this time. I'm going to do this a couple of times. Okay, and now I'm going to do the same thing with another rubber band and make an X.
So you're putting rubber bands diagonally across both sets of sticks to
Yes.
hold them together?
So now I have a nice little X. Okay, looks like I got a little bit of, what do we call that?
I got some elasticity.
Elasticity, that's it. All right, now we're going to take our spoon. And we want to attach that spoon, almost like a lever,
Very good, yeah.
to the end of the popsicle stick. And we don't want to get past our X. So again, we're going to loop that over. I'm going to do this a couple of times, and I might have to slide it down probably. Let's see here. Let's see if I can do one more time. And slide it down. So now we have our spoon. Might still doesn't feel like it's on there quite good enough. Let me do a second rubber band.
You probably want these pieces to be nice and firmly fixed together. So if there are any loose parts, maybe try putting another rubber band on just to make sure everything is tightly held together.
All right. So I think we're in business now. All right. I think we're looking good. So we look like we might have a catapult.
Looks like a catapult to me.
So I'm going to take my snowball. I'm going to put it on my spoon. I'm going to hold it so it doesn't, my catapult doesn't move. I'm just going to do just a little bit. Oh, it didn't go very far.
It's a good start.
I'm going to slide it to the end of my table now.
Okay.
And I'm going to pull it down really far. Anybody have any ideas what it's going to do if I go really far? Oh! Let's try it again. I'll do it one more time.
All right. Try again.
So I wonder why this works. Let's talk to a scientist.
Yeah, I'd be happy to tell you. And now, Ms. Meads used a word just a few minutes ago. She said the word lever. And that's an important concept here. What we basically made here is a lever. That's something, a simple machine that was created over 2,000 years ago by a Greek scientist named Archimedes. Now, I'm going to teach you how to use a lever, and more importantly, I'm going to show you how to make this as powerful as possible. To do that, I'm going to have to show you a picture. I'm going to ask you guys, have you ever been on a playground somewhere and been on one of these playground pieces of equipment? Sometimes they call them a seesaw, sometimes they call them a teeter-totter, but you have one person on one end of a long stick, and you have another person on the other end of the long stick, and this board is balancing on one single piece. And we call that the fulcrum. Sometimes they call that the pivot. But this whole board just kind of rocks up and down, and these kids have a grand old time as they go up and down in the air. So, has anybody ever been on one of these before?
Yes.
Excellent. So you know what I'm talking about. Now, what would happen if I say, well, I don't want this to move at all. I want this seesaw, this lever, to stay perfectly balanced. What that means is that there is something that stays the same on both sides of this device. We call that the torque. And if you were with us a few months ago, we talked about torque already. The secret to this, though, is that I need the torque on this side to be the same as the torque on that side. Now, torque is kind of complicated. If these two kids are about the same size and about the same weight, do you think this is going to balance? Yeah, I'd say the way that it looks right about here. we've got sort of a boy over here and a girl over here who look like they're about the same size and weight, so there's probably about the same amount of force pulling down on them. I think this would balance. But what about this? What if I give you a slightly different seesaw that looks like this? Now, what have I changed between this seesaw and that seesaw? Looks like the position of the fulcrum has changed from right in the middle to close to one side over here. What happens if these same two children ride on that seesaw instead of this seesaw? Now, is everything going to balance? It's the same amount of force. It's the same two children, but this time, this isn't going to balance. That's because of this thing called torque. Turns out, if you want this system to balance, what you have to do is to make sure the torque, which is depending on two things, the force that's pushing down. So if I have a little boy here on this side of the seesaw, gravity is trying to pull him down with some amount of force. I'm going to call that F. And it depends on the distance. I'm going to call that letter D. The distance from the boy all the way over here to the fulcrum. That distance D is important. Now, if the girl is over here and she has the same amount of force, the same weight, and she's about the same distance away from the fulcrum, then this is balanced. This torque and this torque are the same size. But that's not always true. What happens if we go back to this seesaw down here? Well, it's the same size force in both cases because they're still the same two kids. They still weigh the same amount. But now look where the fulcrum is. Now the distance between the girl and the fulcrum is just this little tiny distance D. And the distance between the boy and the fulcrum is this huge distance D. Now, the force times this huge distance is a big number. The force times this little distance is just a little number. So this torque is bigger than this torque, and that means this force, this torque wins. This boy is going to rotate, and his side of the seesaw is going to go down into the ground, and that's the end of the ride. So what would happen if I did this? What happens if I have another seesaw and I put the boy on one side, but now this time, this is still in the middle. So between the fulcrum and this boy on the left, there's a medium-sized distance D. And between something over here and the fulcrum would be a medium-sized distance D. It's the same distance. But what if I make this a really big, heavy kid instead? Well, now, are the torques going to be equal? No, because I have a little bit of force here and a little bit of distance. There's the size of the torque on this side. Here I have a huge, heavy kid, big force pulling down, and this medium-sized distance here. Well, that is a much bigger set of numbers than this set. So the torque over here means this big kid is going to be the winner. He's going to sink down. This little kid is going to rise up in the air. Now, how do we apply that to our Snowball catapult and make it work the best that it possibly can? Can I borrow your catapult for a second? So this is the catapult Ms. Meads made earlier. You can see this looks a lot like this sort of a setup. I have a long board. That's this board right across the top of my catapult with the spoon attached. And I have this little fulcrum here, which is the part of the device that is sitting on this stack of sticks right here. Well, we said if you want to make a really big torque, really big motion, what I have to do is to get a really big force or a really big distance away from the fulcrum, or both, if I can. So if I were to put this down on the table, and I put a little bit of force on it, that'll give me a little bit of torque. How could I make that torque bigger? Well, I'm going to put more force on it. And then that should create more torque that throws that snowball up in the air. Is that the only thing I can do to make this even bigger? What's the other thing that I can change besides the force to make this torque bigger?
The distance.
Exactly. What if I change the distance? What if I move this set of sticks back and forth? Can you find a position where the snowball is a very big distance away from that fulcrum? If you can make that distance bigger, this will probably work better.
What happens if we move the straw? If we move the spoon out? Will that make a difference?
That's a great question. What happens if I move the spoon out more and more and more so that the snowball gets farther and farther from the fulcrum?
We should get more leverage.
Sounds like more leverage. It sounds like I will have a bigger and bigger distance between my snowball on the end of the spoon and the fulcrum over here. The bigger I can make that distance d, the more torque will throw my snowball up in the air. That gives you a few things you can try as you're playing with your structure here to try to make this throw the snowball as far as possible. I win.
So we're going to conclude today with a short reading of The Snowy Day that Miss Bryant is going to read. So we encourage you to listen along, and if you want to see how the story ends, you might want to grab it at your local library. Kanika, we'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. So this is one of my favorite books to read in the winter, The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. One winter morning, Peter woke up and looked out the window. Snow had fallen during the night. It covered everything far as he could see. After breakfast, he put on his snowsuit and ran outside. The snow was piled up very high along the street to make a path for walking. Crunch, crunch, crunch. His feet sank into the snow. He walked with his toes pointing out like this, and he walked with his toes pointing in like that. Then he dragged his feet slowly to make tracks, and he found something sticking out of the snow that made a new track. It was a stick that was just right for smacking a snow-covered tree. Down fell the snow, plop, on top of Peter's head. He thought it would be fun to join the big boys in their snowball fight, but he knew he wasn't old enough, not yet. And Peter continues along on a snowy day, and I really hope that we see one this winter and that we all can enjoy, both scientists and English teachers alike.
So we hope that you've enjoyed our STEM community outreach tonight. So make those snowball catapults and save them for those snowy days. You can go and put your little snowball in it and project a real snowball out into the sky. Have a great day, and we look forward to next time. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.